And you've just heard Rose Pink Sky, which is the opening track of Crossing the Line, the new album from Scots Sea Park. And I'm so pleased to be joined by Scott now. Hello, Scott.
Hello, Ali.
So before we talk about the rest of the album, tell us a bit about Rose Pink Sky.
Well, I knew like pretty soon after writing it that it could be an album opener, right? But I went on a bike ride during lockdown, and I left my crash helmet on the bike ride, and I had to go back and get the crash helmet. And on my way back to get the crash helmet, I started kind of like singing myself a wee story about how much of an idiot I was for leaving the crash helmet. And that's actually the seed of the song. It started as that, as you know, that was the seed, the first little bit. But then where it actually kind of all came together was hearing my wife Danielle, who's she's not a musician, she's an artist. She was singing this melody to herself around the house. She was going like that, but it was kind of like a more kind of show tune sort of melody. It was going like da ba da 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 ba da 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 da. And I was like, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "I don't know. I just kind of been singing that." And I was like, "Right, can I have it?" So that's how the song came about, really.
And that's interesting. I love that there's a story about how the song came about because the reason I picked it to showcase one, it's the opening track, but also I think it shows off what you do so well, which is telling stories. Is that how you kind of consider yourself in part, storyteller?
Yeah, well, I don't really consider myself a storyteller so much as I just feel like no song I've ever written has ever really felt good until I've been really happy with the lyrics. Like I really can't stand letting something out that I where I don't feel like the lyrics are really hitting in just the way I want to hit them. And what how I can describe that is like um, straddling that line between telling enough but not too much, that leaves a degree of vagueness and a kind of gap in the meaning, where whoever's listening to it can kind of complete that themselves. And it's just like an innate sense that you get when you feel like you've achieved that.
And so you mentioned that you kind of knew from the start that this was going to open the album. And what about the track listing of the rest of it? I'm kind of because it seems to me that it's almost an album of two sides. If
It
that
is, yeah, and cool you picked up on that because it definitely came about that way once I stood back and realized how I'd sequenced it. The first half deals overwhelmingly with kind of daily life things and things that are perhaps relatable for a wide amount of people, stuff like being bored at work and kind of like trying to push towards something that really makes you happy, but having to do all of this like daily grind stuff to carry on with that. And then the second half deals overwhelmingly with how I used to be a Christian and now I'm not anymore. Um, and with sequencing it, uh, I think I was just trying to put tracks next to each other that spoke to one another. And then things just started falling into two halves, and I was like, okay, let's go with that. I knew that Crossing the Line was going to be the last track as well. I knew that. I knew my opener and my closer.
and as I've said, Crossing the Line is the name of the album. Where does the title come from?
It's a mixture of like it means a few things for me. Uh, I think where it began was compare it like I'm a musician and I do it, in various capacities for a living, right? But most of the men in my family are seafaring. They've been like merchant navy, North Sea, that kind of stuff, and you can't help but compare yourself to the other men in your family as a a man growing up in like a traditional background.
Mhm.
So. Crossing the line is a ceremony that takes place when a ship crosses the equator. And I'm not sure whether it's like a strictly British maritime tradition or whether it's a more worldwide thing. But when they cross the equator, they have this big party aboard where the people who haven't crossed the equator before have to assume a certain role of I think they call them slimy pollywogs, and they dress them up in, a certain kind of like these weird outfits that are all kind of based on uh, mythology and King Neptune and stuff like that. And then you have the people who've crossed the line before, who are holding court as the kind of like the upper class of the ship, and they make the newbies do these like forfeits and these trials, and they just have a big silly time, and make a big party of it and get to dress up. And I wanted to involve myself in that tradition that so many men in my family had done, in like in my own way, and at the same time, the term crossing the line seemed to refer to crossing over into adulthood. I wrote all these songs between the ages of like 25 and 30, and I feel like that's a time where I really kind of became a person. And then the third meaning of it would be the, transitioning from a life of faith between the ages of like 15 and 23 to a life of like unfaith and effectively atheism. Um, so yeah, it means a few things, and it wraps the themes of the album up pretty well.
That story about what happens when you cross the equator, it feels to me like if I was to go to the pub tonight and tell someone, they'd go, "Someone's having you on." That sounds
Aye,
it sounds so wild.
it's pretty wild. And there's some photos of my dad doing it that I hope never see the light of day.
But this is clearly, and this is your debut album, is that correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I had a couple of EPs out before, but this is I wanted this to be my debut album because I was like, it's time to kind of, you know, put your put your stick in the mud here and be like, here's a statement. This is what I'm about. How do you think? You know?
And writing songs which are clearly so personal, is that difficult? Do the songs come easier? How is it for you?
I don't know. What do you mean exactly? Do you mean like do I find it a bit vulnerable sometimes to like
Yeah,
write?
I think
Yeah.
vulnerability, because you can do it. These are clearly, you've admitted about yourself. You could do it through the prism of someone else, this happening
Mm.
to other people.
Yeah, and there are a couple of times in the album where I do that, where I kind of inhabit I tell a story that's not me,
Yeah.
like in the song Katrina. Um, it's, I mean, they do all end up being about you, in a way. I think it's hard to avoid that as a songwriter, but I don't really think about it. I think I used to write very cryptically when I was like a teenager, a late teenager. I listened to a lot of bands that would write deliberately overly cryptic lyrics, like Biffy Clyro being a big example. I think it's hard to escape the influence of Biffy Clyro when when you were a teenager between like 2003 and 2010. It's like, they were the band. And lyrics like that where it's sort of like a lot of word salad. I would hear that and try to, not that that's a bad thing. I think it's a
Mhm.
very good thing, and I do try to do that sometimes myself. But I ended up um, writing around what I was really thinking, so that nobody who listened to the song would really get an idea of what I was talking about, and how heartbroken I was over that girl not fancying me back and things like that, right? So then I think with this, I was just like, I don't have any time for that. I'd rather write something that's real and honest. And I think with songs more than any other kind of writing, you get let off the hook a lot for actually writing something that's really vulnerable,
Mhm.
because a lot of times people just hear a song. They don't really hear like this really dark lyric that maybe reveals like something quite, you know, quite nasty, but they just hear like, oh, that's a cool melody anyway, and they get on with their day.
Yeah. I think that's true, and I think particularly when the music's quite powerful as it is. I mean, it's, particularly on Rose Pink Skies, we've heard, it's quite a big sound. So
Mm.
sometimes, you have to really dig down. I think I enjoy this as a listener. You've got a bit of work to do as a listener to really get to the heart of the songs, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah, I agree. And I made these little booklets. Oh, you hear that? That was my dog mooing. He does that
So
sometimes. Uh, I made these lyric booklets for my shows that I played in Glasgow, Inverness, and Stornoway just at the end of last month, and they I wanted to do that because not everyone has a CD player, and I made this thing so that people could actually like read the lyrics for themselves because it's hard to, yeah, you're right, they just pass you by on a casual listen, and with how busy life is, a casual listen is sometimes the best that you can do, but that's fine.
Yeah, you mentioned playing live. How were the gigs? And
They
what?
were really good. I was kind of, I mean, I think I did everything right. I had like a band made out of people who I really get on with. We get each other musically, and uh, that was, once we were two rehearsals in, I was like, oh, this is going to be the best. This is going to be so fun. So. Yeah, they went tremendously. It was in the Poetry Club in Glasgow, and then Tooth and Claw in Inverness, and then a homecoming show at Launter in Stornoway. Yeah,
And you mentioned, the influence of the maritime, at least in part, on the album. Do you think living on Stornoway, being close to the sea, does that affect your writing at all, or do you not know? I mean, I guess you just write how you are.
it's hard to know, right? But people often ask, like, are you influenced by the place you're from? You must be, you know. And then my initial thought is, nah, I'm not. What are you on about? But I think it's like asking a fish what water tastes like. Like
Yeah.
I'm so in it I don't realize that, yeah, I am writing about this place and all the religious stuff and the Christian stuff and the church related stuff that I write about in my songs. Like, of course, that's about here because there's such a strong Christian presence on the island, on the Isle, in the Outer Hebrides, maybe more so than anywhere else in the UK. And then with songs like Katrina, that song it takes place in like an imaginary town that is extremely heavily inspired by Stornoway. Yeah, all these when I'm writing a song like Katrina, which is like a very story-based song with a lot of imagery in it, I had that had to take place somewhere in my mind, and it definitely takes place here in Stornoway.
I'm really glad that you flagged up Katrina a couple of times because we're going to hear that later on, and it is a tremendous. I think it's the longest track on the album. Is that right?
Yeah, it's about 6.5 minutes.
Yeah, and it's a really great example of storytelling. But we've talked about the songs and the lyrics in particular. Let's move on to the music. How
Hmm.
is it recorded, and are there other people involved?
Oh, yeah, there's other people involved, definitely. I mean, I wish I could play pedal steel like Connor Smith, who plays pedal steel on the album. But yeah, I had someone ask me, they were like, "Did you play pedal steel?" I was like, "No, no, 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 no. I hope nobody thinks that." Because we had so yeah, Connor Smith on pedal steel. We had my friend David Matheson on drums. We also had some additional drums from Liam Chapman and DC McMillan.
Mhm.
Um, we had Michael McGovern on acoustic guitar, backing vocals, some electric guitar, who's releasing music right now actually too. He's just got a couple singles out from his upcoming record. Um, then we had who else was on backing vocals? Isla Scott was involved. She's another artist who's just starting out, and she's got a great EP under her belt. And Paul Martin played keys, and we played music together since we were like 8. I'm trying to think if I've forgotten anybody here. And of course, the whole thing was recorded and produced at Black Bay Studio over on Great Burner on the west, in the west of Lewis by Pete Fletcher and Cal Roden. Roden. I don't even know how to pronounce his surname to be honest, and I think maybe now is the time to find out. And yeah, Pete. Yeah, so it was done over there in about like a week of solid recording, and then some overdubs in the kind of months after it.
And in terms of the how long this has taken you, have you had a lot of these songs? I think you maybe did mention this earlier on, apologies, but have you had these songs for a long time?
Yeah, I've had them. Blind Eye was probably the first one that I wrote. And that was written when I was about 25, which is like 5 years ago. And The last one, Crossing the Line, was written about a month before the album recording. So it kind of I mean, that wasn't on purpose. I think albums they take a lot of organization and they're quite expensive to make. So it was like getting things together to actually do that. But the that did take a while. But the benefit of this first album having taken a while is that now I actually have a second one written already, which I'm going into the studio to record in August.
So that, and are there plans already underway to that's going to be recorded and then released soon after? You're going to both?
I mean, I don't want to put too much pressure on myself to say
Sure.
soon after, but I don't want to laze around either, because you know, this gearing up to release this album, Crossing the Line, my debuts. It's been exciting to kind of releasing a debut album does make you take yourself a bit more seriously, you know. Um, I mean, not to the degree where I feel like a lot of the music that I've written now is like I've been able to write because I take myself less seriously as a person. But then releasing a debut album makes you take yourself a bit more seriously, like as an artist. So I want to just keep this going and keep sharing the music that I'm making because I'm writing it, you know, it's
Yeah.
there.
It's never occurred to me until you said that, but I guess you never make a debut album again. So do you feel that there's almost a pressure taken off having recorded these songs and released them or not?
Oh, aye, man, absolutely. I think that you realize that once you got that out, that you're like, oh, I've got more songs, and you can be like, right, I'm gonna try moving in this direction for album two, and having kind of a lot of comfort in knowing that, right, if you move in a certain musical direction, you can always move in another one for a subsequent album, and so on and so on. I think you know, too often you can find yourself as an artist thinking that you need to throw everything you know into one body of work,
Yeah.
or even everything you know into one song. I think some of the songs, some of the music I wrote when I was a lot younger were was so like overwrought and complex because I was like trying to say with those songs, like, look at all the stuff I can do, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. And have you found that actually often a more straightforward approach, if that's the right word, is it could be a better one?
Yeah, I get it. It's I heard Neil Young describe writing a song as being a bit like sneaking up on a rabbit or something. It's like I think he said something like you got to pretend like you're not actually there to catch the rabbit, and you got to sneak up on it and be like, I'm not really gonna catch that rabbit. I'm just moving closer to a rabbit. I'm not really gonna catch it, and then bam, you catch it. You know. So like trying to see a song idea through from start to finish is like you can't grasp it too tightly. You just gotta like have this kind of delicate conversation with how the song wants to be written.
And the songs that you had for a while, going back to when you were 25 and the early ones, have they changed a lot over time to kind of fit in the overall? Because this feels to me like an album where you almost the songs kind of speak to each other. It's a very complete collection. So have things changed to kind of fit that overall?
Hmm. Let me think. The initial recordings that I did of them were very bedroomy, you
Mhm.
know. I think the biggest change that's happened is I went from like that kind of bedroom drum machine, self-recorded, a bit lo-fi sound into something that was a bit more reflective of what I was doing live with my pals. Um, but there haven't the songs that are on the album, if you went back and listened to the first recordings of them, it wouldn't be drastically different. Although Enough for You had this huge, long, like 2.5 minute Dire Straits-esque outro that we just cut. You know, like we were going back and forth with it for weeks, and then we were just like, how about we just get rid of it? And the song just immediately became so much better.
Well, I have to say, I've been listening to the album a lot before our chat, and I just, it's fantastic. It just, as I say,
Thank you, man.
feeling that these songs really kind of work well together as a whole, which is how I like to listen to an album, to be honest.
Mm.
It works so well. We're going to hear Katrina in a minute, but Scott, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me.
You're very welcome, Ali. It's been really fun. Great questions and great talking to you, man.
And this is Scott C. Park and Katrina.